walking in about a half a mile, and I asked him, I said, well, how many rounds did you bring with you? And he goes, oh, I brought one. I said, what, one box? And he goes, no, one shell, one round. And I said,
was the name Barney Fife?
It could have been Barney Fife's uncle or cousin or something. It was enough where me and my friend looked at him and said, we go, no way, we're going back to the car. I remembered instantly, like the story my uncle told me. He shot that bear up by Mount Shasta several times before he got mauled, and it didn't drop it. So, I mean, you can imagine being with somebody shooting at a bear with only one round. No way.
Yeah, that's a little spooky. I didn't know there was a bear around Shasta that was that aggressive.
Oh, yeah, that would have been back, let's see, I was probably about 10 years old, so we're talking, 55, 56 years ago?
Uh-huh. Yeah, could have been. Maybe there's a grizzly down there or something. Usually the grizzlies are the ones that are aggressive. The black bear or the brown bear in California are usually timid. It normally run from you. We shot one bear up there at a camp when we was having these Bigfoot encounters. There's a lot of bear up there, by the way, and you definitely will see them if you go up to where we go. But we had to shoot this bear who was actually raiding our food and our barrels that we'd taken in by mule, and we all of a sudden realized that's not a Bigfoot out there. There's something tearing up our camp, and the horses and mules were just stomping, and they don't do that when Bigfoot's around. They just was frozen, just with their ears pointed towards the sound. They'd just be there like that. And, when the bear's around, they stomp, and they were stomping. So we stuck our head out there, and this bear was there. So this is about midnight because it woke us up, and we ran out there and shoot him off. And he went out and started circling the camp. We went back in, and all of a sudden, he's out there tearing it up again. We went back out again and did it again. The third time we went out with our guns because we didn't have our guns to start with because bear will usually be timid around you there and run away. But the third time we went out and he didn't run off. He just went out about 30 feet and stood up and looked at us and said, oh, these guys don't look that bad. He's out there in underwear. So he started coming back, so we shot him. Right there at our stove area, and skinned him out the next day and ate his hindquarters. But he looks so much like a human, it's kind of freaky when you skin him out and spread them out they look like a man.
Oh, wow. I never realized that.
Yeah, and anyway, that was the last time we had close-in encounters with Bigfoot, too. And I write about that in my book, thinking maybe that might have had something to do with why these things don't come around close like they used to before. At least they don't sound off close. You hear them chattering in the distance sometimes, but they don't come in close to the camp like they did with these sounds that you'll hear in a few minutes.
Now, do you think it's because you maybe frightened them where they felt like they didn't want to, be around you after that? Mistrust you?
I don't know what they was thinking. I know what really woke us up wasn't the bear making all that noise. It was a Bigfoot screaming behind us. And up on a ridge just not too far from us, from our shelter. And then you hear the bear down there. It's like he was either waking us up, the Bigfoot was, or trying to scare the bear off. I'm not sure what. You don't know what's going on. But what we do know is that we shot him and we needed to. He was going to come and get us if we didn't. So that's very unusual because I've stood up there right on a rock because bear can't see with a flip, but they can sure smell you. If you're upwind from them, you're going to be smell, and they're going to get away generally. But I was sitting there on a rock one time, just sitting there relaxing. I saw this bear and two cubs. Here she comes. She's just strolling around, eating, and cubs are right by her, They got within, probably 50 feet of me, maybe, less than that, really. And one of the cubs started coming up towards me. Never saw me. I was downwind. And they didn't smell me either. All of a sudden, he got up, and he got probably about 15, 20 feet from me, and I thought, he better not get any closer. That mother's going to get after me.
Oh, yeah.
They protect their little ones. And he stood up, and you could tell he was smelling. He smelled me. And he ran back to her, and they all three shot off the other way. But they never saw me. And I thought that was pretty cool. I did have a gun, so I could have protected myself, but I didn't want to have to shoot something like that. They're kind of neat to watch, and Try to understand. I've had deer do the same thing. When you're still, they see movement more than anything, and they smell. But olfactory scent of a bear is really unique. It's better than a dog. I know I had a ranger tell me in Yosemite one time that they had different cans of different things out there to check a bear and see what they would go after. They had a can of peaches. They took the labels off all of them. And the bear would always get the peaches, not the peas or whatever else they had out there. They wonder, well, how does this bear know where the peaches are? He was actually smelling through the can.
That is good, being able to smell good. I mean, you figure the cans after they're done, they are clean and sterilized on the outside before they even labeled.
Well, these weren't even open. The bear would take the peaches and bite it, and that's the can he would take. I know the grizzly. Now I flew my plane into Canada one time. We landed this next to this riverbed on a Bigfoot mission, but there's so many grizzly bears in that area. We went out, and I knew not to leave food in the plane. I don't do that because they'd tear your plane up. But we went out and came back, and a bear had been up on the cowling of my airplane. Big scratch marks down the cowling. And I left him there. I thought, that's pretty unique. That's a good story,
Oh, yeah.
But you see them all over the place. The big salmon berries all over the place up there, and they're just a lot of grizzly bears. So you got to be careful. Have some kind of protection with you, whether it's bear spray or a gun. Actually, I had a shotgun with plugs in it at that time. They allowed you to take survival gear in, and that's what I had with me. So could have warded off something with that.
Now, have you ever been scared on any of those trips that you made looking for, Bigfoot and run across bears or other things that you couldn't have ever account for what they were?
I got to tell you, I think, as I mentioned earlier, you got to control your fear factor. That's very important. Know who you are as a human and what you really have as a human being inside of you. And I have that. And the last time I had a little bit of a tendency to be afraid, not afraid, but just kind of uncomfortable, was I went up there by myself. Scott Nelson, the cryptolinguist, wanted to get some more corroborative sounds. We went up there, and we went up there for a week, come back out, replenish ourselves, supplies, went back up again. Went up there 3 times that summer, and he had to get back to his teaching job in Missouri, and I thought, well, I want to go up again because nothing happened while he was there, except our batteries were going dead. That was always happening, but that's not unusual around these things. But I had to go back, and I had one of the offsprings, one of the guys that used to go up there a lot, said he would go with me. Well, at the last minute, he backed out. A lot of people afraid to go up there. It's can be intimidating. And the trip itself is pretty taxing on someone. You got to be in shape or else have a horse. And so he backed out. I went up by myself because I got to find out if these things are still around or not. Nothing's happening. And I went up there and set up this little tent. The mosquitoes were horrible, and it was still daylight. And I went inside the tent just to get out away from the mosquitoes and started reading a book. And wham! Right outside the tent, this big sounded like a gunshot going off. And that's what these things, that's how they announce themselves sometimes, a big old wood knock or a wood clack or rocks clacking or something like that. There we are. That'll jar you right quick when you're by yourself. Oh, I guess this little pea shooter with snake loads in it, I call it birdshot. And so I wait a minute and I unzip the little tent and I get out there and I got a towel. I'm keeping mosquitoes off of me. And I just stood out there and started talking to them like you would a person and asking them to come out and reveal themselves to me because I want to know more about them. But either I wasn't ready or something. I'm not sure why they won't expose themselves to me because I'm not going to try to hurt them. And nothing would happen. So I stayed out there till dark, and I went in because that's not what you want to do is stay out there by yourself in the dark because then when something happens, you can get shook up. But I went in the tent, and I lay in there and had my tape recorder ready. I checked it out earlier. Everything's ready to go. All of a sudden, I hear this chattering going on. And, oh, gosh, I got to record. My tape recorder wouldn't work. It just The battery was totally dead. It was a brand new lithium battery. I just put it in. And I hear this big thunk right out there by the stove. I was probably about 15 feet away from it, and hear this bipedal walking around the stove area there right by my tent. And I started talking to it, yelling at it. I said, I told you not to come back here later at a dark time and scare me, because that's what it was doing. It was a little concerning, I got to tell you. So anyway, whatever it was walked up the tent. It was right there, and then it wasn't, or something. I had to have left, but I didn't hear it leave. And I just laid there pretty much the rest of the night waiting, and 4 o'clock that morning, I hear this electrical sound. Now, there's no electricity up there. What are you talking about, electrical sound? That's the only way I can explain it. It sounded like some type of a electrical apparatus working, and that was at 4 o'clock. And as soon as it got daylight, I packed up and left because my question had been answered, and they're still around. But yeah. I was ready to stay up there three nights. I had food for 3 nights. What I think this thing was looking for around the tent there, around the stove area, was food. We used to leave food out. I didn't leave anything out, and I just didn't think about it because I didn't even start a fire in the stove because I wanted to get in before dark. So I think that's had something to do with something. There was no food for it, and they like our treats. They like what we leave them. They eat what we eat. They're omnivorous. They eat fruit. They eat meat. They eat pretty much everything we eat, unless it's rotten, and we don't eat rotten food. I know one time we buried some food gone rank up there. We buried it in a pile of dirt that we had. We just dug a pit hole for our trash, and then we buried this meat that we'd had up there from the time before. It had gone bad, and they came in that night and was making their noises like they do, and this meat we found the next morning was a big handprint on that pile of dirt we had, and the meat was under there, buried. They buried it in that pile. So they don't like rotten meat. We found that out. At that time, we thought, they would probably eat like a bear would eat. We didn't realize what we were dealing with, and we underestimated them grossly, and caution people today, if they have some encounters, don't underestimate what they are. They're a sapient, I believe, and that's only supposed to be humans are supposed to have that, but I think they are humans. So don't underestimate what you're dealing with when you're around them. And you don't know if they're good or bad, so be prepared for anything.
No, that's what you have to look at. Now, I had a guest on my show months ago that she lived out in the middle of woods, basically, in her cabin. And she claimed that she saw a Bigfoot by her shed one day. And then it was like stealing from her garden she had. And then it got to the point where it was throwing rocks every night on her side of her cabin on the roof. And, that went on for a long period of time. And then finally she said she basically made a goodie basket, and left it out by her porch. And that kind of like solved the problem where the Bigfoots or whatever supposedly were coming in, ripping her garden apart for the, vegetables and stuff and taking it out. And they were happy with their little goodie box. And she even said at one point, one of them like left a little trinket for her. I mean, have you ever heard any things like that at all?
Absolutely. Yes. We've had it happen to us up there. We would gather pine cones. I put this in my book too. And to start our fire, they're very good for starting a fire. Dry ones, and there's a lot of sap in them. And we'd fill up our kind of like a small pan, which we used to use for watering the horses from our spring. But anyway, we'd do that generally when we wanted to do a fire. Well, we come back one day from hiking, and they had left a pan full of pine cones there for us. And another time, we'd re-roofed the shelter one summer. And when I say re-roof it, we put plastic, it's kind of group of trees in a circle, and there's cables around that, and then cables crisscross around the top, and then you put deadfall up over everything. And then we put plastic over that to keep the rain out, and then put alder brush on top of that. So it looked like a big beaver's nest, really. And that fall, when we went back up, so much happened that night. We found